Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined by cinematographer Eric Steelberg, ASC. Over the course of his career, Eric has shot films such as Juno, Labor Day, Up in the Air, Ghostbusters Afterlife, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Young Adult, Draft Day, Tully, 500 Days of Summer, The Frontrunner, Baywatch, Saturday Night, and many more. On today's episode, we will discuss his work with Jason Reitman on Saturday Night. It is my pleasure to welcome Eric Steelberg.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you on my show. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. You have worked with Jason Reitman on 9 films now, and as I understand, you two go way back anyway. And how has your professional relationship grown over the years, which happens to be one of the most fruitful director cinematographer relationships of the past decades?
It's a great question, and it's something I get asked a lot, and I think my answer changes every time because we've also changed so much over time. I will say this: we've grown and become better filmmakers and storytellers since we were teenagers. I think that is the simplest answer, but I think we've also just learned also like what's important to us individually as storytellers. I think when we started, or in the early years, we were always trying to stand out and impress other people with what we could pull off. It was like we were making films for other people. And as we've gotten older and more mature as storytellers and more confidence in our storytelling ability, I think we've stopped trying to, you know, act like we're a member of the club and then just focus on telling good stories, things that we like that are important for us. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's just like, what I mean. It's like I think everybody when they're starting off or trying to impress everybody to try to convince people that they should have a seat at the table. And we were fortunate enough to have some success very early on, and I think yeah, I mean, just and we've learned what's important in storytelling, more than others. I think it's just deciding on what the important point of view is and allowing ourselves to be scared. That's okay to worry. It's okay to be nervous about whether or not we're doing the right thing. Like that's what fuels us. Like we should never feel that we know exactly what we're doing or like, oh, we're really good at this. Like I think as soon as we do that, we've lost it.
On Saturday nights, Eric, how did you discuss your work during the pre production stage in order to be well prepared for principal photography?
Well, we started our conversations for pre-production, I would say, let's see, 24, summer of a year and a half ago, summer of 23. Not long after we had wrapped photography on Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It was during the strikes, and the conversations came up again, where Jason was talking about how he thought Saturday Night was going to be the next movie. And originally, he had when he first sent it to me about 4 5 years ago, he said he wanted to do the whole movie as one continuous shot, not appear as one shot, but actually film it in one long hour and a half take. And we we decided that that wasn't going to be really feasible any longer. So the conversations in pre-production began to go into how do we make this as immersive experience as possible to really feel the pressure cooker of the night, be very subjective, fly on the wall, have the camera be a character. And then how do we accomplish that if we can't do the long single shot? And what we decided we wanted to do was make the film a series of very long shots where possible so that we never cut away from what was going on. You saw all this layers of action and things happening in parallel. No, every place the camera, you know, pan to, and then we just had to figure out how to do that, and then what scenes deserved, the sort of the long shot treatment and what scenes would benefit from more traditional editing. And we did something we always do, but we expanded upon it. We typically in pre-production on our films will do something called photo boarding, which is where we take some stand-ins or in ourselves and we go to locations and we take pictures of what we think the camera angles are. And we create sort of photo storyboards of all the scenes. And in this film, we not only did that while the set was being built around us on the soundstage, but we also did videos so that we could see how these long takes, in particular, would go from subject to actor, and room to room, the hallways in the studio, and how everything would connect, and try to figure out how to make these long connecting shots happen. And I have to say, we spent 3 or 4 weeks before we started shooting doing that. We would have started earlier, but there was no set, being built, because literally we would go in and there wouldn't be walls in some cases. And we're trying to figure out, how to do these shots without the spaces to actually shoot them in. So, and then of course we got closer and it's like, okay, today we have a wall. Today we have a ceiling. Okay, now we have a light, and we know how to turn off a light on our iPhones. So, and that was what most of our prep was. Jason and I have such a good long relationship that, I think we can skip a lot of the normal process and inspiration conversations because we have such a shorthand. We've been working together for so long. Although we still watch movies, in this case, Robert Altman and Michael Ritchie movies. New York in the 70s was obviously a huge inspiration for us. And then the final kind of big conversation we had in prep was how are we going to shoot it? Like, what's going to be the format? And we had done a movie a few years ago called The Front Runner that took place in the 80s that we shot on 35 millimeter film. But in the process of prepping that film, we had also tested 16 millimeter. And we ended up obviously not shooting 16, but we always remembered how fond we were of it and loved the look from the test footage we had. And again, one of the early conversations Jason and I had was, is this the right movie to revisit the idea of 16 millimeter on? So I was actually apprehensive about it because, 35 looks so great. And as a 16, but this is a big studio film and or a mid-sized studio film. And there's certain expectations for movies that are in theaters. And 16 millimeter usually isn't one of those expectations. So we shot some camera tests. Actually, we shot a lot of camera tests, some of which are on the actually special features of the DVD have some of the camera tests on them. And I shot some 35 and 16. We looked at it, and as soon as we saw the 16 on a big screen, Jason just said, "That's the look of the movie. We've got to do that. And how do we make this happen?" And I continued to shoot more tests, and we showed these tests to the studio. And after a lot of conversation and questions and nervousness, Jason was able to convince them to let us shoot on 16. And so with 16 and the prep and the photo boarding, those are the big puzzle pieces we had to get over. And that was most of our prep. And then beyond that, it was just kind of figuring out how to light these long shots and giant spaces for these, long continuous shots and all these rooms. And it was very tricky because all the light had to be built into the set. So when I wasn't with Jason talking about these other things I just mentioned, I was spending a lot of time with a production designer, Jess Gonsher, set decorator Claudia Bonfi, and figuring out how to put all the lighting that we needed, how to build it into the sets. Because the way Jason wanted to shoot it and the way I wanted to move the camera didn't allow for traditional lighting from the floor. So everything had to be built in or planned ahead of time. Right. So it was quite daunting.
What strikes me about Jason's films is that he seems to honor a certain type of film. He tends to focus on characters, on storytelling. Those are very important features, obviously. And so he doesn't tend to do a big spectacle, So his films are very elaborate, also emotional. They have comedic elements and so on. So there's a lot going on. And I love his films and I love your work, obviously, too. But how does what I've just described challenge you as a cinematographer when you do a film which relies heavily on performances, a film which is very nuanced, and you have to cover a lot of ground?
Yeah, that's a great question too. Nobody's ever asked me that. Yeah, obviously Jason's films um, are very character driven and probably a little bit lower on the whatever somebody would call spectacle as a lot of others, but it's not about that. I mean, Jason does movies where they're frequently flawed characters, conflicted characters, and how those relationships with one another needed to define them and make them relatable to the audience. And I think that's Jason's strong suit. That's just what he's so good at. So the challenge for me is like, how do we enhance that or aid it with visuals that don't perhaps stand out on their own, but that feel really good and really appropriate for the stories. I mean, I like to think that all the movies that Jason and I have done, like it might not be spectacle or high production value visually. But I think when I go back and I look at it, I'm very happy with some of the photography that we do in it, whether it's camera moves, lighting, or a combination of, because I think we do a really good job using the camera to tell the story. Like the camera isn't just there observing these actors, like we actually use it to help tell the story. So there are movies that I see that I feel it's like, well, what a wasted opportunity for photography. Like they just didn't do anything. They turned a camera on and recorded it, and that's it. There's no photography. It's more of just capturing. And there's a lot of movies that do that. A lot of movies with a lot of writer directors, in fact, do that because the writers who direct their own movies, it's like I feel that sometimes these movies they want, or my impression is that the writing and the acting and the directing is so important. They don't even care about the sound of the visuals because it's just there just so it can. It's how people can see it, right? It's just a delivery medium. Whereas with Jason, those things are important to him as well, but he really likes. I mean, he's actually loves photography. He collects photography. He has a passion for photography. He absolutely loves it. Thankfully, he doesn't really know how to do it because then he wouldn't need me. But I think that's why we get along so well is because I really love story and I really love character, and I look to story and character to tell me what the visual should be. Like, where should the camera be put? What should the lighting be? And Jason recognizes that we'll be far more successful with his characters and his story if we embrace photography to its maximum potential. And again, it's not always what's the most beautiful things, but beauty comes out of having really appropriately shot and thoughtfully designed camera work. And I'm really proud of the camera work that I've done on his movies and that we do together because he's really into it. It's really important. We talk a lot about it. I think that's I don't know. I think you said it as it was a challenge, but I don't really think it's a challenge. It's just it's something that's really fun and special to do with Jason that's unique to the movies that we do together. I think learning how to design cinematography for character driven stories and have good cinematography come out of it is actually sometimes harder than when I'm told, oh, just make this pretty, just make it look like a nice shot. Go shoot a nice landscape or a nice sunset or a really dramatic shot of this big, interior space. That's all fine and that's good and that's fun, but I find it less challenging than what Jason and I do together.
And I know that many people praised the cinematography of Saturday Night and, of course, of your previous films as well. But what strikes me also about your latest film with Jason is how elaborate some of those shots really are and how the camera moves around, how it follows the actors, how it backs off, how it zooms in, and so on. And that's not necessarily commonplace in today's cinema, where on most occasions or on many occasions everything seems to happen really fast and quickly. And so I've always been a big fan and proponent of elaborate cinematography, and I love it when the camera really moves around. Obviously, Brian De Palma used to be a master of
Mhm.
just that. And how many takes do you actually do on some of those scenes? Do you feel like, or do you and Jason feel it's a necessity to rehearse a lot and then just do one take, or to do 10 takes of that? What do you feel is best or works best?
Well, generally, we don't rehearse a lot. We want to get the actors fresh and, not having thought too much about it, just to see what happens on the first take. But in the case of a lot of those long shots you mentioned on Saturday night, yeah, like that first shot where they walk out of the elevator into the eighth floor for the first time, we spent the entire day before our first day of photography rehearsing it, full dress rehearsal, all the actors, camera, everybody. And then the entire first day of the shoot, we spent filming it entire day, 10, 11 hours, one shot. And I think we did 20 something takes of it because it's about just under a 4 minute shot. And it would take about a half hour to reset it each time, maybe 20 minutes, go figure out what was wrong and then fix it and then go back and do it again. So, yeah, we did about 20 something times. And at the end of the day, we finally got one we liked. Then we went on, shot the whole movie. And then towards the end of production, Jason said, you know what? I think I want to redo that opening shot. And I said, what try like the big shot? And he goes, yeah. So why? He goes, I think I want I want it to be longer. I want to see more. And I was like, you're kidding me. We spent a whole day just trying to get that right. And he goes, yeah. He's like, but I feel like we were so well oiled now and we know what we're doing. We can probably do it better. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you want to do different? He goes, well, instead of going down the hall and turning before we get in the studio. So originally the shot goes down the main hallway. You see the 8H doors, they open, you see inside the studio, and then the camera pans and goes down the side hallway. He wanted to actually have the doors open and have the camera go into the studio, see the studio more, really take in all the chaos that's happening and there are all the people, all the things going on, and then turn left and then go down the hall under the scaffolding that which are under the seating. So you could see all that stuff happening there. He said there's more to take in and we should see everything. We shouldn't just stay in the halls. So we spent the entire last day of our shoot on that set redoing that shot. And I think it didn't take all the whole day that time, but I think we took about 17, 18, 19 takes of it. And one of those last takes, yeah, I think we got two good takes out of that day of it. And that one of those last takes is what's in the movie.
Wow.
So yeah, it's we spent a lot of time. I mean, the thing is that we were really disciplined. There's a couple times when we are doing some of the long shots, Jason said, should we cut away? Should we get coverage? Should we, have something just to cover ourselves? And I'd say, I don't know. I mean, if you want, and then he would say, no. We're doing this. Let's stick to it. Let's just get it right. And we would just do it till we got it right, you know? And he stuck to his word. Anytime we had a longer shot, he kept it. Or there were sometimes we do shots where you'd be on one person and then the camera would whip pan over to something else. And a lot of times when they do that in movies, during the blurriness of the pan, they'll actually put a cut in there that nobody can see so that you can reset the camera and then go shoot the new thing. And you blend those things together, but we never did that. I think that maybe there was one shot in there that was done as an editorial thing at the end of the movie, but everything else, all those whip pans, that's all in camera, and a lot of them even have a lens change. The lens would be a zoom lens that would change focal lengths. You'd be wide at the beginning of the shot, and as the camera whips over, the camera team would zoom in so that by the time it stopped, it was like telephoto when it stopped. So it was like changing the lens in the shot. A lot of technical challenges, and everybody had to be in sync. So we would rehearse with the camera on the camera side of things for the harder shots often, but we would do it without the actors so that the actors were always fresh, and then we do it till we got it right.
What do you think was a defining moment for you, either in terms of, a conversation you had with Jason, or maybe a specific scene that stood out, or an actor's or actress's performance which you are in particular fond of?
I mean, look, I think that long shot I just talked about at the beginning of the movie. I mean, I mean, honestly, there's so much, but like, I like all the control room stuff. All the stuff I like are actually all really big acting moments. Um, uh, I loved all the stuff with Lamore and playing Garrett Morris. I love all them recreating the little sketch beats. I love the stuff with Milton Berle, but like that big shot, in the hallway that we did on day one, you know, Jason was asked, Jason, are you sure you want to start with this on the first day of the shoot? He said, like, not wait until, everybody's a little more in sync and it's not the first day and everybody's still trying to figure out how to work together. He said, that's exactly why I want to do it on the first day. It's because I want people to know, like, this is the movie we're making. It's going to be hard. It's going to be chaotic. It's got to be chaotic for us so that it looks chaotic on screen and it's believable that it's chaotic for them. And that's the movie we're making. And that's what, I want to get across. And if we can do that, if we can get that done on day one, the rest of the shoot's going to go great. And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's right. And we did it. And it's exactly what it did. I mean, honestly, all the scenes are so great. I'm fond of a lot of things. I'm fond of the scene where Neil's looking for John Belushi, and he gets high. I'm really fond of the stuff we shot at the beginning of the film in New York City. At the beginning of production, we went to New York 2 weeks before we started in Atlanta and shot in the lobby of Rockefeller Center on the sidewalk and in the ice rink. It's magical to be there, shooting at such an iconic location. I mean, every day was fantastic. It was such a joy. It was one of the most joyful sets I've ever worked on, which is so weird because it's also, I think, the hardest shoot I've ever worked on in a lot of ways. I mean, everybody was at the end of the day just exhausted, but through the exhaustion, everybody was just joyful and so elated that what we were doing. I mean, the entire crew was just, they were so happy to be there. Yeah, actually, I think one of my favorite parts of the whole experience was when in pre-production the studio had expressed reservation about us shooting on 16 millimeter and had told Jason, you know what, we think the 16 tests you did look fantastic. We really just would prefer that if you don't shoot 16, it's going to be in the theater. We'd much rather it be 35. And I was like, well, that's that. It was fun while it lasted. We tried, but here we go. We're going to end up shooting on 35, which is great, but it's not, what we wanted. And Jason went and he fought them, I mean, cordially, like creatively. It wasn't adversarial, but he stood up for the vision of what he wanted it to be and what we wanted to do. And when I found out that he actually, didn't give in and stood up to the studio about this thing that was so important to us creatively, it was a good moment because I knew we were going to do something that was going to look different, was going to feel different, and was going to be an experience unlike any I've ever had and probably will ever have.
Did you have some consultants or perhaps even some of the original SNL crew members in order to be able to achieve a certain level of authenticity also? Because I think it can be really hard to recreate the magic of past decades.
I didn't have any consultants for anything I did, but I mean, look, Jason and Gil Kennan, who also wrote the script with him, they interviewed everybody. They interviewed everybody from the first night, all the actors. They interviewed crew people, anybody that was alive that they could find and track down, they talked to. And so I got a lot of stories through them. We did research in books and photographs. Our production designer, Jess Gonsher, he even worked there early in his career painting sets. There was a lot of knowledge. I went and visited Saturday Night Live when we were in New York during the day one time and just kind of had around and saw what it was like. But no, I didn't. I didn't have any consultants. I mean, we brought in some TV control room people to be actors in the control room, just so some of the dialogue and activity was, sort of authentic to how, a TV control room really works. and we brought in some video engineers to help set that up. The cameras on the floor, because the cameras on the floor were playing live into the control room, so we had that authenticity. So we're in the control room, we could see things that were happening on our stage. But for all that authenticity we got, I think it was also important that we didn't lean too much into authenticity, because it's not a documentary we're making. I mean, the script is compiled of stories from not just the first night, but from different nights in the first season, to sell the chaos and the pressure of getting the first night on the show. So for me, like, I didn't necessarily need it to look exactly like it looked on the first night and have the hallways be in the same lighting, have the studio be the same, but it had to feel right, and I think it's important that the artist creatively be allowed to interpret that feeling into their own, with their own set of tools, and portray, what it felt like to be there that night and sell that to the audience in much the same way that the actors, they're not doing impersonations of the people they're playing. They're doing these suggestive performances, and taking certain, you know, qualities of those people and then doing their own thing. So you believe because they feel like the person, you buy it, right? But if you see them side by side with the person doing the same performance, you're like, oh, it's not, they're not like that at all. But you start to believe it. So the believability comes from nailing the feel as opposed to the accuracy of it.
Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up for today? Because we are nearly out of time.
Oh, no. I mean, listen, I'm just thrilled that you took such an interest in the photography of this movie. I mean, there's so many great people I worked with on it. Like, Steve Morrow, our sound mixer, found out a way to make the sound feel like this cacophony of energy and ambience that was just so impressive. And John Batiste recording the score um, live on set at the end of wrap. We'd wrap and everybody would start to, instead of going home, people would go back to the stage, and John Batiste would watch it cut from the editor on a laptop and start, recording the music for the movie on the set, never in a studio. It was just crazy. And this is the kind of movie it was. Everybody was just, open minds, open hearts, and just really trying to go for it and deliver this amazing story of what happened that night that, changed TV and comedy forever.
Eric, thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. And I had a great time talking to you today. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I had a good time.